Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has also criticised what he called Israel's ongoing aggression against Lebanon. Mr. Sharif has called for restraint from all sides ahead of negotiations mediated by Pakistan between the US and Iran. Those talks are scheduled to take place on Saturday in Islamabad. Ahead of those talks, security in the Pakistani capital is being tightened. Hundreds of extra police are being deployed and authorities are cordoning off a 3-kilometre security zone around the luxury hotel where the US and Iranian delegations are expected to stay. Well, going into negotiations, the two sides have substantial differences, with each sticking to competing demands. Iran has put forward a 10-point plan, which includes the lifting of primary and secondary sanctions and the release of its frozen assets. Tehran is demanding the withdrawal of the US military from the Middle East, a halt to attacks on Iran and its allies, and control over the Strait of Hormuz. Traffic through the critical waterway remains at a virtual standstill. Iran's now reportedly only allowing up to 15 vessels a day under the ceasefire agreement. This compares with around 140 vessels a day before the 28th of February. Iran also wants to formalise a toll on ships navigating the waterways, it says, to pay for reconstruction. Well, the European Union is one of many voices condemning the idea and calling for unrestricted and toll-free movement through the strait.
We are here to actually pronounce what the law actually says, and international law provides for the freedom of navigation, which means what? It means basically no payment or toll whatsoever.
Sina Azodi is an assistant professor of Middle East politics at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. Well, welcome to DW. Let's start with Hormuz. We've seen Iran restrict access to the strait again, now only allowing up to 15 vessels through per day because of Israel's attacks on Lebanon. Can you see any future deal credibly being able to restrict that Iranian stranglehold on this vital shipping lane?
I think that if there is a political settlement to end the conflict in all theaters, then you can, I think, theoretically say that Iran would also guarantee free transit of ships through the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz to the Arabian Sea. However, I think Iranians have just realized that they have a very strong economic power that can threaten global economy, coerce adversaries into submission. So I believe that in the future, if a conflict arises again, Iranians could potentially put a chokehold on the strait, and all they have to do is to attack. They don't have to close it entirely. All they have to do is to attack one or two ships, and then the insurance prices go up, and all the instability that it will bring to the global markets, it will serve their interests.
OK, so now we're into the second day of a ceasefire that was broken almost immediately by both sides. How important is this ceasefire deal to Iran?
It is very important to them. I think that for them, it turned out into a war of attrition. The cost of the war on Iranian economy that was already under sanctions is around, from what I heard, is around $1 trillion. They need sanctions relief in order to reconstruct the economy, all the facilities, the civilian infrastructure that was attacked by the Americans and the Israelis. Those need to be reconstructed. And what do you need for that? Money. So I think that this ceasefire and the negotiations that we will have soon, I think will play a very important role in Iran's future.
Right. So regardless of the ace in the hole that they have with the Strait of Hormuz, the country's in tatters. They need this ended so Iran can be rebuilt.
Absolutely, that's correct. And this is why I think one of the reasons that Iranians have been insisting that war in Lebanon should also cease is that they, from their perspective, the conflict in Lebanon could again reach Iran and drag them into yet another conflict. So what they're asking, what they're pushing for is a clean sheet for the entire region, stopping wars in Iran, stopping wars in Lebanon, to make sure that, again, they don't have to deal with another round of attack.
I've seen it written that Israel's purpose in intensifying its attacks on Lebanon is essentially to try and drive a wedge between Iran and Hezbollah. Iran now has to decide, do we want a ceasefire or do we want to back our proxies? Do you subscribe to that?
I don't share that assessment. I think that, first of all, the conflict in Lebanon goes way back, and it is not limited to the recent conflict. But I also think that the Israelis are, in a way, they have a strong interest in continuing the conflict, because the political objective of this war for the Israelis were not achieved, and that was regime change, to bring a regime that is more aligned with their interests. And that didn't happen, as many of us had warned. So I think that their interest is to continue the fight, whereas America's and Iran's interests are to cease the fighting. This is why I think that the Israelis are continuing the fight. They're trying to kind of poke Iran into violate the ceasefire, so the fighting is resumed, and then we go back to whatever we were only 3 days ago.
And given that those conflicting war aims, Israel to try and continue to destabilize Iran, the United States to try and settle this and get out as quickly as possible, do you see trouble down the road for the two allies who were opposing Iran?
You're referring to U.S. and Israel, am I correct?
Exactly, yes, yes.
I think that this is where their interests diverge. I don't think that the U.S. has a vested interest in destabilizing Iran. It's a very large country with its natural resources. A fragmentation of Iran is not in the U.S. interest, whereas all of those are in Israel's interest. Now, I don't know where this is headed, but I think my concern is that, and we read recently in New York Times, that how the Israelis sold that narrative to the administration, to the U.S. administration, that this conflict will be walk in the park, it will be easy, and the regime is going to collapse very quickly. My concern is that they will do it again. They will drag the United States into yet another conflict with Iran, which is not in the interest of the United States.
Talks are scheduled to happen this weekend. The US wants to remove Iran's stockpile of heavily enriched uranium. Will the current leaders allow that?
I don't believe so. I think that on the issue of enrichment, I think that Iranians will not give up on the principle of enrichment. And when it comes to the highly enriched uranium that you just mentioned, I think that ultimately that deal could be part of a broader settlement with the United States and the IAEA. I believe that it is the responsibility of the IAEA as the sole international body that monitors non-proliferation. I think that that issue should be resolved with the agency and not directly with the United States. Because why do I say that? Because from Iran's perspective, if the US comes and takes that highly enriched uranium, it would really look bad on any administration in Tehran, and the hardliners would try to sabotage it. So I don't believe that Iranians will quickly submit to the U.S. coming in, taking out the highly enriched uranium and leaving with that.
And a final word then on who's in charge. I mean, now that Israel has killed so many of Iran's top tiers of leadership, who are these much more reasonable leaders that Donald Trump has talked about in his social media posts?
Well, I don't necessarily call them more reasonable people, because I believe that some of the people who were killed by the Israelis and Americans, they were the ones who were more reasonable. Namely, I would say Ali Larijani, who had a PhD in Western philosophy, who had written on Immanuel Kant. He is now replaced, and he was a seasoned politician. No reformist by any means, but he was a hardliner, but he was a pragmatist figure, a seasoned statesman. He is now replaced by an IRGC general. This newer generation, I think they're a more hardliner with their military background. They bring a more rigid approach to Iran's foreign policy. Now, someone like Ghalibaf, Ali Ghalibaf, who is now Baqir Ghalibaf, excuse me, who is now the Speaker of the Parliament, he's also one of the hardliner figures who's considered to have some pragmatic streaks. He is someone that you can work with, but I don't think that the change that has happened in Iran is by any means a change in a good way. Right. The new generation is more hardliner and all with military backgrounds.
Thank you so much for guiding us through that so clearly. Sina Azodi from George Washington University in the United States. Thank you so much.
Thank you.